Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our podcast. Wow.
Hello.
I know we officially started this series last episode, but now we're kind of getting to the meat of it. So we're excited and nervous. But first, wanted to introduce our podcast. We are a podcast that covers a variety of topics from faith, enneagram, third culture kid, navigating adulting, and as you know, we have a lot of brain dumps in our episodes. And before we get into the meat of the episode, hi, my name is Yehna
Hi, I'm Jessie, and welcome to our 13th episode of At
at
the
the
Table.
table. Woohoo! Wow, that's crazy. Every time we count our episodes, it's wild to me that we made it this far.
I know, like it's weird every time. I feel like we're still like on our fifth or whatever, but
I know.
this one's exciting because I think this is the questions that we're going to be answering are ones that I don't know of. Like
Right.
Yana and I haven't talked about this at all
I know. We like to deep
before.
dive really quick, so sometimes we
Yeah.
forget like the fluffers.
Yeah, like the slight details of like, oh, who
Right.
was your roommate? I forgot who your roommate was freshman year.
It's okay. My
But
goodness, but it's true. Yeah, I don't know a
yeah,
lot of details like that. Like, how did you find your roommate? Who was your roommate? And how was that just the beginning of our college career? So I'm excited to
right.
learn too. So this is gonna be fun.
We're kicking off this episode with roommates because this is where it all started when we
Right.
started Wheaton.
It's true.
It started with our roommates and figuring out like how to go about that.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be covering what our process was of finding a roommate, what was it like sharing a space with someone you didn't know, figuring out other people's habits and lifestyles, navigating confrontation and conflict. And obviously, this is something that everyone does if you go to college or and are in a dorm. So hopefully, a lot of you guys can relate to each of our stories.
Yes.
But we just thought it'd be, fun to have a light episode like this. So
Yes. It'll be nice for us too.
let's get started. Process of finding a roommate. Yana, go for it. How'd you
Okay.
find yours?
So I was hearing from so many people that like finding a random roommate was a thing, like just kind of going blindsided, but Anxious Yana Kim was not having it. I needed to know who it was. And I was very fortunate. I knew people who had already gone before me. So they had informed me of a Facebook page that is made for each grade. So, of course, I went into research mode, probably a little too much. So, on this Facebook page, I started scrolling, reading through people's bios, um where they introduce themselves. Is really, honestly, looking back, very cringe but very cute. I will say one thing I'm very proud of myself is that I did not make one, JK. But I
Oh my
found
gosh.
I didn't. Did you make one? Just
I
kidding,
think
I'm
I
not.
got tagged in one.
No shame, no shame. Okay, but I found one roommate or one person that I was really interested in. And we did talk a little bit back and forth, but it didn't work out, which in hindsight, very grateful for. And then the second one that I read through, I just was like, oh my goodness, so good. My agenda for finding a roommate was that I wanted someone with a similar background as me, so that there would just a minimal explanation needed when doing certain things, bringing in certain foods, and all of those things. So I was able to find a person. I won't mention names because I never really checked. It was not a big deal, but I don't want to mention names. But it was amazing because we roomed for a good 2 years. And I will say she was an amazing roommate. And I was so grateful to have found her. And so it was really by God's grace that I found her. So, yeah,
Mm.
shout out to who you are. So, yeah.
Oh, that's cute. I
Yeah.
forget that it's kind of like online dating. I mean, I've never done
I
online dating,
I know, kind of like that.
but it's kind of like you're shopping for
It's
like,
so
ooh, who
true.
is going to match me the best and
Yeah.
who do I like?
She was the most aesthetic roommate ever.
Oh my gosh, now I remember who it is. Yes, she is aesthetic.
I love
Sorry, I was
it.
just blanking. I
No,
mean,
you're
every
so
year
good.
we switched up. So
So true.
cool. Cool, cool, cool.
Right.
For me, it's as simple as, I mean, my parents told me that so I roomed with my childhood friend Emmy, and our
Ooh,
parents or her dad and my mom went to high school together. Like our families go way back. I've grown up with her ish because I moved back and forth, but
right.
I've known her since I was little. So my parents just told me, oh, she's going to Wheaton. And I was like, cool. And then I think either I reached out to her or she reached out to me. And it was just so much easier because then your stress is gone of like having to
Yeah.
figure out like, oh, is that
Who
other
am I
person gonna
gonna?
like me? Or is that other
Right.
person talking to other people?
So
So it
true.
was just it worked out for me. No stress, easy option, locked in
Yeah, me
by like
too.
February or something,
I
So
love
that
that.
was me.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
super
I,
simple.
I like how we like definitely took the safe route.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
it
not
was
about to risk that.
too much anxiety
So
figuring
true.
out. I was already having anxiety about like who gets which side of the room and like
Okay, definitely not
being
me.
type A. Okay.
For me, it was like, I don't know this person. Like, what would I even talk about? Like, I would want to know them a little bit before going in so that I don't need to like
Mm,
say anything. Anyway, but I'm glad it worked out for us in that sense that we went in with very low anxiety rate when it comes to the person we're sharing a room with.
yeah,
I don't know
that's
about
true.
you,
That's
but
true.
my room was like sacred ground. So I need to make
Mm-hmm,
sure that
mm-hmm.
was good.
No,
Anyway,
that makes sense. But that leads into our next point of like,
yes.
yes, we started off pretty, well, not confident, but like feeling good about our
Yeah.
situation. But how is it actually sharing a space with that person?
Hmm.
Because reality is you don't know that person as well and
Right.
their lifestyle and their living habits. Even if they're a friend going into it, living with them is different, right? So how is that
So
for you?
true. Yeah. At least specifically with my first roommate, I was very blessed. I had it
Mm,
very, very easy. Um, she was very great at communicating, which honestly I was very spoiled because of that. When it came to garbage, when it came to cleaning the bathroom, because we shared a bathroom. No, it was not a communal bathroom. It was shared with just two other suite mates. So we talked through it. She was the one who initiated all of that. She would tell me just in advance what her sleeping schedule was kind of like. So then it led me to also communicate what that was like for me. And then whenever things kind of were uncomfortable, she never left time for it to grow into anything worse.
that's
So
huge.
I know it's huge. I don't know why I never took that at lesson and carried that into the rest of my year, but that's for another time. But at least for the good chunk of my freshman sophomore year, I rarely had any conflict with her. I'm sure there were moments where it was uncomfortable, like because I slept too late or I would come
Mm.
in too late, or sometimes the state of my room would reflect the state of my mental health, if that really gives a little bit of me. And so she would have to like remind me again, can you please not put your like laundry in my area? And I'm like, girl, so sorry. But then it would be a wake-up call for me. So then I would like try to clean everything up, do laundry. And so honestly, she made me a really great roommate. So I would have to thank her. I'm sure on her end, there are a lot of frustrations. I know for a fact, but for me and my perspective, it was truly A plus plus. So just my freshman year.
Wow.
Yeah, really. I know.
You're starting off strong.
I started off really well roommate situation.
That's awesome.
Why I didn't hang on to it, don't ask me.
You should have stuck it through all 4 years, but
You can't get everything, apparently. Anyway,
Ooh.
to
No,
you.
I mean, well, I was gonna say rooming in general, just even if
Mm,
it's good or bad, it stretches you so much, right?
so true.
Because you're out of your comfort zone of what you've known for your whole entire life. So,
Right.
yeah. For me, I don't know. It's uncomfortable at first. Like, oh, when does your alarm go off? Do you turn it off right away or do you let it ring for a while? Are you a
Right.
light sleeper? Are you not? Are you comfortable with having friends over late at night? Are you not? Do you want to go to bed? Like communicating
Right.
those things and being intentional about communicating those things was new for me. I'm
Right.
not used to
Same.
communicating with people that I'm not comfortable with in my own space. I mean, which is everybody because everyone's doing the same thing.
Mhm.
But especially for me, I realized how bad of a communicator I was. I thought I was good at like, I mean, I still beat around the bush and I'm still indirect, but I thought like I was more of a communicator but I realized I wasn't.
I didn't
So
even know
it's
that was a
just
skill I needed, to be quite honest with you. Anyway,
Yep, yep,
insight
yep,
into
yep.
Yannick's brain.
I well that leads yeah, that's kind of what the third point was, getting to know another
Right.
person's habits and lifestyles. I think the trickiest one was like how we socialized and what that room space
Mm,
meant to us. Because for
so
me,
true.
when I was in my room, I didn't want to talk to anybody. Like it was a space where I could just turn off that switch.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I would leave my room, that's where my social life began. And like I would
Yeah.
come home to rest.
Mm-hmm.
And I wanted that space to be restful. But maybe for someone else, they would want to have community within their room
Right.
and have a deeper relationship, or maybe they want more out of the rooming situation than
Mm-hmm.
just a
Just
functional rooming
rooming.
situation,
Yeah.
And so having just different expectations going into that might
Mm-hmm.
create some kind of miscommunication
Yeah.
or like a little bit of tension, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
So that was hard, tricky for me to navigate, even though I knew my roommate. I thought that we were on the same page. Sometimes we had to clarify a lot of that.
Right.
How
It's
about
so
you?
true. I completely agree. And even just going further with that, there were things that we didn't even know bothered us that would arise
Yeah.
as we live. And so then it's like, oh, self check. And then you reflect and then you need to communicate. And I'm not saying this to say that I was really good at that. I was actually really bad at that. And so
Mm,
because of that, there were so many things that arise. And honestly, it was like going back and forth between, oh my goodness, am I being dramatic? But I'm clearly angry about it. So I need to
mm,
do something about it, but I don't know how because it's so awkward and uncomfortable. But definitely communication, just all around, was the biggest lesson I had to learn in terms of rooming and obviously friendships and everything else. But yeah, so
mm. Well, then, how did that look like in conflict? Maybe you never had conflict with your roommate, but how did that work out when it was in terms of confrontation?
there's so many different stories, but I want to share like the fun one. Going fast forward to sophomore year. So we had an unofficial roommate freshman year, and then she became our third roommate. Shout out to Hayne, which she also became my roommate post grad. So it was really fun. And
Cute.
there was a moment where, when it came to kind of going back to the topic of like navigating rooming situation, functional living, how do we want to be friends, and all of that, we're kind of slowly stirring. And I was also slowly recognizing what I was like as a friend because I didn't have I don't know, that's not what I want to say. I just didn't have a concrete way of making friends because they were kind of just handed to me growing up. Now that I have this choice and I'm navigating rooming and navigating this, and like you said, how I wanted to use my space was a huge factor coming into sophomore year.
Mm-hmm.
As a leader, as a ladder leader who cared for freshmen, I wanted my room to be a space where people can come in and reside and rest. And I had kind of made that a little bit. I've like mentioned a little bit to my friends, but I think when that became like full force going into the semester, it caught her by surprise and me. And by the way I was bringing more people in, surprised her, and the way she would had responded to some of those things. And so there was a point where we did not talk for at least 2 weeks, and it was the most uncomfortable.
Wow.
I know. Welcome to Yena's passive aggressiveness. So I
I didn't
I
know that.
I want to say I'm so proud because since then I actually like just it was like a wake up call to the
Mm,
intensity of my passive aggressivity. Anyway, there were definitely tears that were shed and a lot of like I walked in and whenever I knew that she was gonna be in the room, I'm like didn't even make eye contact. I would go into the bed. It was a messy situation. And we laugh about it, and it's like, oh my gosh, passive aggressive. And we could joke about it. That's why I can say it, talk about it comfortably like this. And finally, our third roommate, so my freshman year roommate, had enough of it. And so she had sat me down separately and sat her down separately, talked through it to hear our perspective. And she's not just an excellent artist, she's an excellent cook. And so she texted us in a group chat and said, we're having dinner. You have no choice. Both of you are coming. We're like, oh shoot, what is she gonna do? And she had created this wonderful steak dinner for us, and it was like the most amazing thing. And we finally talked through it, what our thoughts were, what were our trigger points, what were things that our own insecurities that we're bringing to the table, and just all of those things. And we were like bawling our eyes out. And then since then, that has made us become better communicators and better friends, and just overall really good roommates. Because I'm not saying after that there were no tension, there was, but we never let it go more than 24 hours. Either one of
That's
us would
great.
yeah, so it was been really good. So
Mm.
I will say that's the best case scenario I've ever had in the 4 years that I was in wheaton when it came to roommate situation. So I'm very grateful for that experience. Sorry,
I love how you like tried to make it like into a positive thing and then anyway, no, that's great. That's great. Like, and you're able to look back at it and be like, haha, that was
no,
cute. Look at
we're so
us
funny.
all,
Yeah,
we were children, haha,
I know. Yeah, when we
So
joke about it for sure. But
yeah.
Jessie, I
Looking
can't.
back, it's like, wow, how like I literally get over yourself kind
I
of thing.
know,
Like that's
it's
how
so
I feel
true. I'm
looking
like,
back at my own. Right.
anyway,
I
we're
mean,
so
and it
dramatic.
goes, yeah, and it goes
Yeah,
both ways, right? Like how that's
sure.
being communicated, how that's being received.
Right. For
Um,
you?
I can remember my first confrontation was on a sticky note because that's how bad I was at confrontation. I mean, first of all, I'm a two, so I hate conflict. It
Mm-hmm.
literally gives me so much anxiety if someone is not happy with me or like
Yes.
upset at me, and that will literally eat me alive. And
Right.
so when it was my turn to confront, I didn't know how to start that conversation. I didn't know, like, there were so many times I would want to bring it up and my palms are sweaty. I'm like stuttering through my words or whatever. So I had to write it on a sticky note, sit her down and read it, no eye
Mm.
contact, and like sobbing as I'm reading word for word. That's how bad I was.
Hey, at least you read it. I thought when you said
Oh
sticky
God.
note, you like
Yeah.
left it on her bed or something and like disappeared.
No.
Hey, that's not bad.
That's where yeah, that would be bad. I had to like and I knew I had to sit through it. So I wrote
Mm.
it, I read it, we both cried. It was literally over like the smallest thing ever. But again, it's one of those where like tension builds up and
Mm-hmm.
you just need that one thing that triggers you that sets you off
Right.
of your limit and then boom. Or at least
It's
that's how I roll.
no,
And
I
I've
get
tried to
that.
like minimize that before it explodes. You need to communicate so that you don't pile up your anger
Yeah.
or tension. So that was me. And we laugh about it till this day. So
I love that we
that's
can
something
like look
cute.
back on it and laugh about these things now. So, because there are
Yeah.
definitely things we can't, but I'm glad there are lessons that we learn and we can carry into today and actually smile
Yeah.
about it and obviously put it on podcast for the world to hear.
Yeah, look at us, all
Look
of our
at
overcoming stories.
yours.
But last but not least, especially I don't know, as we were recording this, I realized like, oh yeah, this is fun for people who are out of college and listening and kind of it gives them a space to
Mm,
reminisce. But this is also for an audience of like people who are in high school, maybe about to start college or like
yeah.
in early high school
Wild.
and not knowing what rooming even, looks like. So what was your perspective going in, Yana, when
Mm,
you knew you were going to have a roommate? Was it more like, ooh, am I going in here expecting a lifelong friend, or am I going here just sticking to um, the functional purposes of sharing a same space and just rooming together?
right. I think I just want to put a disclaimer. Either or is not a bad like perspective to walk into. I think I was just, as someone who gets attached really easily, and my parents knowing that, they warned me saying, you not warned me, kind of advised me and gave me a heads up saying, you don't have to be best friends with your roommate. And you don't have to be friends, period, with your roommate. It's just learning to room with another person well. And so that honestly helped so much walking into the roommate situation there, because there's no like emotional expectations coming from the person you're going to live with.
Hmm.
And for someone like me that gets a little bit emotionally attached too quickly. So I walked in with this expectation to just be really sticking to the functional living. But through that, I was very blessed to have gained a really good friend. But because this functional living was the main thing that like lingered on the back of my head whenever she did go out, make new friends, or went out to do her own thing, and didn't some even though we lived together, sometimes I wouldn't see her for days. There was no like emotional like bitterness or tension because of that. And we were able to live our best lives outside of just being roommates. And so, and through that communication, I mean, obviously her personality played a huge role in that, but overall, like learning to communicate the functional living skills became our priority aside from building this like friendship. And yes, friendship is important, but when it comes to roommate, I'm a firm believer that that functional living will serve you in the long run. That was me walking into college. And so, of course, this really speaks to what my personality was. So,
No, I was going to say that that's super important, communicating what the expectations are at the beginning, because
yeah.
I assumed that we both were like, oh, this is great. We're childhood friends. But you know what? Like,
Mm,
we have a leverage, like we already kind of know each other, so that's great,
right.
and we can just go on living our lives while also being friends. But that expectation, I think at first was different, at least for me. And
Mm-hmm.
so maybe there were times where it looked like I was ditching her, or maybe there were
Mm,
times where I wasn't being as consistent of a friend. So just establishing that expectation at the beginning and being like, you know what? We might know each other, we might have a lot in common, we're excited, but like we're not going to put that pressure or weight on being roommates at the moment, and just see how this goes. And
right.
if, we're also great friends, that's great. Like
Right.
my roommate Emmy and I would say we're better friends, or our relationship tremendously grew post grad or even post rooming together, because we
Mm-hmm.
were so much more intentional and appreciative of our friendship,
Right.
and we're able to put so much more healthy energy into our friendship. But at the same time, you could be living with your best friend and you
Right.
could hit it off the first day and
Mm-hmm.
just roll with it for the 4 years. Like that
Right.
works too. I've known friends who have done that too, and it works great for them. So
I
it
know
just really
there are so many,
depends.
it really depends on you. And I also want to emphasize like again, the communication aspect. I think something I'd really admire about you and Emmy is that you continued that even after the you guys didn't room together, and just sort of like, hey, roommate, and like you were good about separating the friendship and then the rooming. I'm prone to doing that, is that we made that one thing. And
Mm,
so I think it's so important to separate those two in your mind emotionally, because at least for me, that's what caused a lot of tension in rooming
mm,
situation, when I made it so that the friendship and the rooming became one emotional burden, if that makes sense.
hmm.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it takes time, and it takes, again, being okay with being uncomfortable
Yeah.
and sitting through
So
it.
true.
And
Yeah.
that comes with maturity, that comes with time, and
Right.
wherever you are in your life and what you prioritize. So,
And
yeah.
accommodating, because
Hmm.
sometimes you will have to sacrifice certain things, like even small things like shower time. I shower in the morning and they shower at night, and I like having friends every other day and they don't. So finding a middle ground, I think a lot of other friendships that or rooming situations that don't go too well is because some people have a hard time sacrificing certain things or accommodating certain things. And that's, I mean, that is definitely up to you, but a lot of bridges are burned. That's the place where it gets a little sad. So I don't know. That's just one little advice, that it's just sometimes when it comes with rooming, whether it's one other person, two other people, or three, just learning to accommodate with each other's needs, but also not taking advantage of other people's needs.
Yeah. And in the case of it too, being okay speaking up and
Yes,
sharing your needs. You don't
please.
have to always accommodate.
I know.
You
Don't
can
always.
ask for things too. Like that's also
Yeah,
valid.
because at the end, it becomes more anger than like, wow, why aren't they doing the same thing I'm doing? You know what I mean? Yeah. So.
Yep, that was me being a two. So, it goes both ways. But
Yeah.
I wish,
Anyway,
oh, yeah, wish we could go on and on and on. But
right.
Yana, wrap this up for us. What kind of
Yes.
promotions, what kind of selling are
Ooh.
we doing?
Promotions. Anyway, first off, I always say, please go to our Instagram, follow our Instagram, engage with it. I know it's so awkward, but whenever I post stories, it would be awesome if you guys like engage with it, wrote a little something. And especially for those who are like new followers and are listening to this, thank you so much for just taking the time to hear our story. It really means a lot to us. But yes, and then next we're on Spotify and YouTube with Spotify. Please give us a good rating. And then on YouTube, of course, subscribe and like our videos. Yep, that's kind of our biggest platform. So it'd be really great if you would catch us there. But yeah, thank you so much for joining us in this series and this journey of our college life. And we're really excited to share more in our upcoming episodes. Thank you so much for listening, and see you guys or talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.